Hi guys, Kyo here, and I'm here to tell you why I'm excited about the upcoming school year in Miriam College. This is the first time that Miriam College is going to have a borderless or virtual campus, and I think it's a pretty cool thing, especially if you're not situated in Kansas City. Like me, for instance, I'm actually doing this video here in Cebu, where I'm from, and I don't have to go all the way there to get the quality education that I want to have. I can just do it here. At the same time, I'd like to invite you guys to join the International Studies Department. International Studies is a course that could help you understand the emerging issues, especially the ones linked to globalization and how it could affect or challenge theories in international relations and development. In the International Studies Department, we'd like to say that we like to think globally and act locally. At the same time, there's no late mindset. Okay, and lastly, I want to say 我希望你们加入在我们的部门，因为这个部门会打开你们的视野，而且会给你们的未来带来更多的机会。所以呢，我想说，让你们的 MC Adventure 在这开始。
Hi, I'm Reg Cortez Torrecampo, a graduate from the Department of International Studies. International Studies is a comprehensive interdisciplinary program that provides students with global perspectives, theories, and tools to understand historical and contemporary political, economic, social, and cultural changes affecting the country, the region, and the world. It also builds the competencies of students to be responsible citizens and competent leaders who are globally aware but locally rooted. It is one of the most progressive IS programs in the country, as well as the only one that offers specialization in international politics and peace studies, and global development and gender studies. The relevance of the IS program lies in its ability to draw from past realities that change or continuously shape our contemporary world and tying these to our current realities to create a more peaceful and just world for the succeeding generations. Ideas of sustainability, inclusivity, intersectionality, equality, and peace that somehow define the IS program continues to gain traction in the academic, business, and public sector decision-making. Your career opportunities will be as diverse as the perspectives provided in this program. But there are industries where IS graduates are highly in demand. Equipped with the competencies in international studies, it can lead to careers in diplomatic and consular affairs, government service and policy think tanks, international and regional development organizations, and non-government organizations. It also allows students to pursue further studies in law, economics, international development, and public policy. There's something exciting with the IS program at Miriam College, which I wish was offered during my time. But now, students can earn their bachelor's and master's degree in 5 years through its honors program, where you can deepen your expertise in IS. Complete your journey with us. Be part of the College of Arts and Sciences, where creativity, adventure, and service come together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to IVLP Faces of Exchange Alumni Impact Stories. I am Jules Giyang, your host, one of your co-hosts actually for this afternoon. So every March we celebrate Women's Month, and so today our discussions will focus on women's rights and gender equality in contemporary world. So, joining me today to host our program is a sociologist researching and standing with women and youth in the margins. She is an alumna of the Y. Sealy Women's Leadership Academy, and she teaches sociology at the University of the Philippines. She also sits as an officer at various civil society organizations, including the Youth Against Sexual Harassment. Please welcome my co-host, Miss Ash Presto. Miss Ash, hello.
Hello, hi Jules. Good afternoon and good morning to our friends in Turkey and Poland who are tuned in today. So today, some of our discussions will focus on women in politics in Turkey and in the Philippines, women's health concerns in Poland, and women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM, in the Philippines.
That is right, Ash. In celebration of Women's Month, this particular webinar will focus on different global issues affecting women around the world. We will also hear from some of the IBLP alumni working on the issues of women's rights and gender equality in their respective countries.
And before we proceed to today's program, Jules, let us just acknowledge our viewers on Facebook and on Zoom. Hi, everyone. So feel free to use the comment section on Facebook and the Zoom chat box for comments, questions, or even your greetings.
And also to stay updated, please stay updated online. And if you wish to post on social media, you may use the hashtags hashtag IVLP, hashtag YCLE, hashtag Exchange Alumni, and hashtag USPH Alumni. So those hashtags are on the screen right now. And for those of you who are watching us via Zoom, you may access the attendance sheet through the link in the chat box right now. So the link is now in the chat box. So, friends, this week-long series is a part of the 80th anniversary celebration of the U.S. Department of State's International Visitor Leadership Program, or IVLP.
And now, without further ado, let's just get started. To open today's session, we'll hear from the chairperson of Miriam College Department of International Studies, Ms. Melanie Reyes.
Ms. Melanie, go ahead.
Yes, on behalf of the Department of International Studies of Miriam College, YCLE Women Philippines, USDS IBLP, and the US Embassy Manila, maligayang buwan ng mga kababaihan in Filipino, Mutlu Kadin Raayi in Turkish, and Strigevego Mesheka Kovet in Polish. I hope I was able to pronounce them properly. Anyway, I just want to greet everyone a happy Women's Month. So our forum for today is indeed very timely, not just because it is Women's Month, but because gender issues in the time of COVID-19 pandemic are very real to many women around the world, be it in the areas of health, education, the digital divide or technology divide, economic opportunities, social and cultural aspects, gender-based violence, and political participation, among others. So in this forum, we have invited 4 IBLP alumni working on the issues of women's rights and gender equality in their respective countries, who will talk about the different issues and concerns in their communities. Specifically, there will be 3 topics that we will be discussing today. One is on reproductive health rights of women, which we can see from the lenses of development, legal, and rights perspectives. One of our speakers, Barbara, will talk about the controversial Polish abortion ruling, which can be seen as impediment to women's rights. Another interesting topic is about women and STEM. So globally, there are few women in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math, especially that girls and women are systematically tracked away from the science and math throughout their educations, therefore limiting their training opportunities to go into these fields. Our expert in this field, Ms. Gloria, will talk more about the key factors perpetuating gender STEM gaps, which may include gender stereotypes where STEM fields are often viewed as masculine, it is considered as male-dominated cultures, there are very few women role models, and of course, the common math anxiety. Finally, we have 2 speakers, Asha and Mayor Sweet, who will talk about women in politics. And this can somehow impact our advocacies for the first two topics, women's reproductive health rights and the participation of women in STEM. And in this coming UN Commission on the Status of Women session, one of the priority themes is women's full and effective participation and decision-making in public life. At the global level, we can see progress in the increase in the number of women elected or appointed to decision-making positions, but full gender parity is still far from being reached. And women rarely hold leadership positions in executive and even legislative bodies. And this pretty much resonates the Philippine setting, where we can see that since 2006, the Philippines has always been in the top 10 most gender equal countries worldwide, based on the Global Gender Gap Index of the World Economic Forum in 2018. However, it is quite alarming that the country dropped to number 16 from number 8 in the 2020 Global Gender Gap Report. Some of the key issues and challenges here include the socioeconomic and structural factors which hinder women's participation in politics. The critical mass of 30% women's representation in government has not been reached. The resurgence of the culture of sexism and misogyny, and the low number of women occupying top management positions in public and private corporations, among others. Similarly, global scenario shows that gap remains because of these persisting structural constraints and barriers that reinforce discriminatory norms, practices, and policies. There is lack of political will to change power relations in accordance with the international commitments to gender equality. Increasing number of violence against women cases, the issue of climate change and the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, which intensified the obstacles to women's participation, especially for those facing multiple forms of discrimination. So in women in politics, it is important not just to get the numbers right, but what matters most is the substance and quality of women's representation. As at the end of the day, what matters is not what gender equality laws we have, but whether these are enforced and implemented, and whether they did change women's lives. So with that, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone, depending on our time zone. And I hope that we will have an engaging discussion today. Welcome again, everyone, and thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Melanie, for your opening remarks. Ash, also, Miss Melanie mentioned several issues that we're expecting to cover this afternoon, particularly on reproductive health rights, women in STEM, and she mentioned a very important data that the Philippines has always ranked higher in the global gender gap report, but lately there's been a drop because of several factors like misogyny, discrimination, and lack of representation in top management positions. What's your take on this, Ash?
I actually love Miss Melanie's last sentence. So at the end of the day, what matters is the implementation and not really the number of laws that we have. So the data is actually from the policies and the national laws and the ordinances that we have. But there's a disconnect, right? And I'm saying this as a co-host and also as a sociologist, that the lived experiences of women don't necessarily follow that number. So maybe we'll hear more definitely from our resource speakers for today why that is
That's
so.
right. All right, so now let's hear about stories of women from IVLP alumni in the Philippines, in Poland, and in Turkey. All of that here on Alumni Talks. Go ahead, Ash.
So our first presenter is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Groningen. She is currently working on rule of law practices in the European Union. She is also a member of the Expert Committee on Civil Rights and Special Services under the Human Rights Commission in Poland. So let us welcome our first speaker, Ms. Barbara Grabowska-Moros.
Hi, Barbara.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. It's really a great pleasure to be able to share with you a couple of thoughts regarding women's situation in Poland. I want to link two issues. The one I'm actually working on, this is a rule of law and also so-called rule of law backsliding that can be detected all around the world, but in Europe, I think in particular, there are a couple of interesting cases, including Poland. And on the other hand, I want to talk a little bit about how it affects women's rights in practice, And as a case study, I want to discuss so-called abortion ruling, which was issued in Poland in late October 2020, so in the worst time of pandemic, which caused massive protests in Warsaw and Polish towns and cities. And I want to discuss how rule of law backsliding, how rule of law crisis might affect women's rights in practice. I hope I will speak not longer than 10-15 minutes, and I hope you will have quite a lot of questions regarding this issue, and we'll be able to discuss it. So the first thing I think which we could start with is what actually the rule of law is and what it is about. And of course I can give you a lot of possible definitions, but I think the main element, which is really crucial for everyone in any state around the world, is to have tools and mechanisms that will allow to limit the public powers, the public officials, that they will be limited, and also that they will be found accountable to what they are doing. So, on the other hand, what the rule of law backsliding is in fact a deliberate attempt to dismantle all checks and balances which there exist under the binding constitutions in different states in different arrangements. In the case of Poland, the main element of the rule of law backsliding was a capture of constitutional tribunal. In many states, there is no such body as a constitutional court. There might be Supreme Court. Basically, it's a body which is aimed to be an arbiter. She mean the whole body. They are about to discuss, decide cases which are really crucial to the whole society, to the state. They're going to give interpretation of the law, mostly the constitutional law. And in case of Poland, the institution has been captured in fall 2016, and what we can face right now, there are three so-called fake judges, so appointed unlawfully into the bench, who also participate in ruling cases, including this one from October 2020. And one of my theses I want to say and express very directly is that in every case of rule of law backsliding, there will be always some sort of consequences for human rights protection and minorities, in fact, in particular. Of course, women are not minority, it's a half of a society, so it cannot be a minority, but in fact, very often they are in a position which can be seen as a minority group. If you and Melanie already mentioned it, when you look at the people in parliament, mostly, usually women are minority when it comes to numbers. You will also be able to see a smear campaign against LGBT community. It also took place in summer 2020 during presidential elections. So this is another example how rule of law backsliding can affect women's rights. And so moving to the ruling, what is interesting is the starting point, how the ruling was how the proceedings were even initiated regarding this abortion case. It wasn't initiated by the opposition. It wasn't initiated by any third party, any NGO organization. It was initiated by the group of MPs of the ruling party. Instead of initiating legislative process, they decided to actually go to the tribunal. Why? Because tribunal is not anymore an arbiter. It actually legitimizes the decisions of the ruling party. If the decision about abortion was about to be too difficult from the political point of view, then going to the tribunal appears to be a little bit easier solution. So what they claimed, what they tried to challenge is one of the situations which allows to get a legal abortion in Poland. What you need to know, Poland has one of the most strict law regarding abortion in the whole Europe. And the situation which they wanted to challenge is a situation of a severe and irreversible damage to the fetus. It's almost 90% of cases of legal abortion taking place in Poland. So basically, if the court says it's unconstitutional, it has to be deleted from the law, it means basically that the abortion in Poland is prohibited in practice. So after there were a couple of hearings which were in the very end cancelled, but finally the hearing took place on the 22nd of October, and the tribunal ruled that the provision which I just mentioned is unconstitutional, and it caused really huge protests in Poland. People were very angry because of the whole situation, that it was not a political process, it wasn't discussed with the society, women were not given voice during the proceedings, no one asked them what they think about it. So the whole really massive protest, as I said, in the middle of pandemic took place. And what is extremely interesting situation, and again it is an example of rule of law backsliding, is the situation that the government decided not to publish the ruling immediately, meaning in October, but they waited until late January. So for more than 3 months, women, doctors, hospitals, they were uncertain whether they are allowed to perform this procedure. So it was a huge challenge for women's rights, for the legal certainty, for their status. It was really a tremendous moment for many people involved in this procedure. I don't want to discuss the ruling itself because it's not, in my opinion, it's not of the highest quality, but also discussing the legal thing, among people is just so boring. But what is really important is, as I mentioned, women were not asked about their position, their status, and as a result, issue of women's rights is not discussed in the judgment. When you look at it, the issue of fetus and children's life is kind of an abstract concept, and there is nothing can be balanced and actually against this value. So the only value that can be comparable to children's life, to fetus life, is another life. So this is a completely different narrative about ruling cases dealing with abortion, and really absolutely nothing regarding women's rights can be found in this ruling. But instead, women, there is another part of the story. So someone else was given voice in this proceedings, and this was a really right-wing radical NGO called Ordo Juris, who really promoted the whole idea of limiting access to legal abortion. So women have nothing to say about women's rights and about access to abortion, but radical right-wing organizations, yes, they do. So when it comes to the consequences of this ruling, we face the situations when women are actually forced to heroism, and this, I think, has really a lot of practical consequences for them. It basically means that in order to seek access to a legal abortion, they need to go to Germany, to Netherlands, to get their rights being secured. So as a kind of conclusion, sorry, I'm trying to find not so sunny sunny view. As kind of conclusions, I just want to underline the relation between the rule of law and the very basic standards of independent institutions and checks and balances, and their influence on the women's rights. If we have independent institutions such as courts, such as Supreme Court, there is really a huge chance that stakeholders, meaning women, meaning minorities, people really affected by human rights issues, they will be heard, and most probably the decisions taken regarding their positions, their status, they will be probably taken into account. It is extremely important issue from the perspective of a public discussion about human rights and women's rights in particular, in my opinion. Right now in Poland, there is no real forum to discuss human rights. the parliament is not such place. There is, a huge political battle, but there is no discussion, no debate how to link conflicting values. So in this position, there is really difficult to find a way to discuss such basic concept with different stakeholders interested in women's rights issue. And as a last point, I just want to say that it is happening in the very heart of the European Union, a place or organization that is supposed to be founded on the human rights and fundamental rights, on rule of law, on solidarity. And I think that right now this is not the case when it comes to Poland. I know it's not very optimistic, but I think this is my final conclusion. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing the challenges and status of women's rights in Poland. So we'll get back to you later to entertain some questions from our participants. And yeah, for our participants on Zoom and who are watching right now on Facebook, I encourage you guys to send in your questions so our participants, our speakers, could address those questions. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Okay, Ash, what's your takeaway with Barbara's presentation?
It's not a pretty photo. It's not a pretty picture, but you can see that there are universal constraints into exercising women's rights all over the world. And I got reminded of a lot of our challenges here in the Philippines also, because a lot of powerful institutions also block our policies and policymakers from considering women's voices when crafting women's issues. And it's sad that we hear these kinds of stories also from all over the world. That's my take, and hopefully we have some reflections coming in from Zoom or Facebook right now about how we can solve and how we can address these problems.
Right.
So
Okay. So
that's for me.
yeah, thank you so much, Ash. So now we move on to our next speaker. Our speaker is a graduate of management engineering with honors from Istanbul Technical University. She successfully completed her master's degree at Istanbul University, Department of Political Science and Public Administration, with her thesis entitled Municipal Budgets with a Gender Equality Perspective, Faith Municipality. She is currently a PhD student at Istanbul University in the same department. Our speaker worked as researcher at the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey on leadership, entrepreneurship, performance, and human resource projects between 2013 to 2016. From 2017 to 2020, our speaker conducted studies on women-friendly cities, gender equality, gender-responsive budgeting, and equal representation of the women at KADER, or the Association for Supporting Women Candidates, as project coordinator. Our speaker has managed more than 25 national and international projects in her professional life for 10 years. She continuously worked for projects in the fields of urbanization policies, women's studies, gender equality, and local governments as an independent researcher. Friends, please welcome our next speaker, Aisha Kasikirik. Aisha, go
Hello.
ahead.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here, and I'm very appreciated to share Turkey's experiences in women's rights, especially women in politics and violence against women. Now, I would like to share my short presentation. Yes, share screen. Yes. Paylaş. Yes. Not video. Sorry. Sometimes there will be a problem. I sorry. Sometimes I have a problem on my screen. I would like to share a little bit presentation on some graphics in women in politics, but there is a problem. It's not allowed to share. I don't know. There is a problem. No problem.
Hi,
I
Aisha.
couldn't share. Yes,
Hello.
Jules, I couldn't share on screen maybe because of my laptop's configuration. If
Okay.
I will send it to you, could you
Sure.
share? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, please kindly send to Helen. Thank you.
Mhm.
In the meantime, you can just proceed with the talk. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. First of all, I would like to mention about Turkey's ranks on Global Gender Gap Report 2020. Turkey ranked 113th out of 153 countries in the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index. It's very low place. Turkey also ranked in 136th in economic participation and opportunity, 13th in educational attainment, 106th in the wage gap, 64th in health and survivor, and 119th in political empowerment. As you know, 1 point means full equality in the index, while Iceland, Norway, Sweden were the closest countries to full equality. Syria, Iraq, Pakistan, and Yemen are really far from the equality. When we would like to more clear to women's in political participation, women's ratio on parliamentarian not only 20%. We have 100 and 100 women parliamentarians in Turkish Grand National Assembly. We just have 42 women mayors. It's just 3% all of mayors in Turkey. We have 11% ratio of women municipal council members. Also, there is a little unit in local governments in Turkey. We called site muhtars. We just have 2% muhtars in Turkey. The numbers, the data are very low. As you know, the women's political participation in global is very low, but in Turkey is really so low. Today, I would like to mention mostly about violence against women in Turkey. It's very, very important topic, especially in pandemic days. With pandemic, domestic violence and femicide remain a major problem. In Turkey, at least 3 women were killed at home or outside or streets in Turkey. And women organizations, I'm also a volunteer of so many women organizations in Turkey. And as women's organizations, we point out that violence against women is on the rise, especially COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Nothing that, despite government claims of the opposite, no effective steps have been taken to rectify the situation, unfortunately. At least 300 women were killed in 2020. I urge all governments to put women's safety first as they respond to pandemic. I would like to underline the most important issue in violence against women in Turkey, that Turkey has ratified Istanbul Convention, CEDAW, and other internal regulations so many years. But insufficient implementation is putting women's life in danger. It is the problem. And we know that home has never been a safe place for women who are subject to violence by their partners or family members. As we know, the global lockdown triggered domestic violence in globally, and the existing socio-economic vulnerabilities of women all over the world are declined. I just also mention a mobile application we called KADES. It's a women support application. It's an application developed by Turkish National Police and launched in 2018. Any woman can download it free on iOS and Android smartphones and active it by using their national ID number. In case of any emergency, women can seek police and police assistance simply by pressing a large button on the screen. This life-saving but little-known application unfortunately hasn't been promoted sufficiently, but nowadays there is a big promotion of these applications. And I also would like to mention about increasing gender pay gap and increasing women's poverty in Turkey also. According to international labor organizations and Turkish statistical institutions last report in 2020, gender pay gap in Turkey is increasing. Women earn a third less than men. Gender wage gap widens as age increases. Gender wage gap widens as educational level decreases. COVID-19 pandemic deepens existing wage gap, unfortunately. Also, non-mothers earn more than mothers. It's as an gender inequalities example. The most common reason for not participating in the labor force among women is being a housewife in Turkey. This is our important problem. Yes. Yes. Now I would like to mention about women leaders in COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, in Turkey, we just have one president 20 years ago. Now we just have two ministers. One is family, the other is trade ministries. But when I look at the global female leaders, Germany, Taiwan, New Zealand, Iceland, Finland, Norway, and Denmark. I think that these countries manage coronavirus responses much more better than the other countries. I think that one of the factor of this success is being women leaders. This is my. This is not only my mention. Also, the global forum and the other international or national institutions said this issue so much in the pandemic times. Many also will say these are very small countries or islands and other exceptions, but Germany is large and leading. I think being a woman in being a woman leader has many other factors to manage global crises. I see again in the pandemic. Also, I would like to say UN Women's Executive Director also called all over the world for more women in leadership roles to help the COVID-19 recovery, because we have the post-pandemic period and we need more women for more sustainable worlds. Only 20 countries have an elected woman head of state or government. While this is a very important data, I would like to underline so much. 119 nations has never had a woman leader, according to UN Women statistics. Data shows that at the current rate, gender parity in politics would not be reached in national parliaments before 2063 and in ministerial positions before 2077. This is very important data. And we need to take urgent actions to more women in politics, both Turkey and in globally. Countries must put more women into leadership roles to build a stronger, better, and sustainable post-pandemic world. Women could be waiting more than a century, as I mentioned the data before. Women could be waiting more than a century to see equality at the highest positions, highest political echelons. It is obvious that gender balance cabinets made better decisions not just for women but for society as a whole. I would like to say it was crucial that also women play a leading and critical role in building more equal, more inclusive post-COVID-19 economies, particularly as so many women had been pushed into poverty. Nowadays, I'm writing my PhD thesis on normalizing poverty of women in Turkey with COVID-19 pandemic. In these data and in my observations and in all other news and publications said that with COVID-19 pandemic, women's poverty is increasing, is deepening very dramatically. That is why in especially Turkey, but in globally, women push to poverty in this new normal life. As a conclusion, I would like to mention that the role of women leaders, the role of women in all decision-making mechanisms are so important to build more equal, more sustainable, more inclusive future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your talk, Aisha. And I do agree that we need more women leaders to build a more equal post-pandemic world. What do you think, Jules?
Yeah, I think Aisha mentioned several universal issues that most countries experience, especially from the women's sector. particularly on the lack of women representation in the management in politics. She mentioned that only 3% of mayors are women in Turkey, so that's a very glaring data. She also mentioned about pay gaps vis-a-vis women and men, and we all know that it exists everywhere in the world. So that's another glaring issue. And one of the most important matters that I think Aisha mentioned was the glaring problem on violence against women. And to me, I mean, as a man, I think it's a very unfortunate thing that it still happens around the world, because I think it's all because of misplaced entitlement and superiority complex of several men. So it should stop. It should definitely stop. So thank you so much, Aisha, for mentioning those data from your country, and we'll get back to you later during the open forum. Thank you so much. Ash?
Right. Actually, gender-based violence is also dubbed as a shadow pandemic worldwide because of its
Yeah.
increasing occurrence because of the pandemic. And Jules, of course, for this episode, we forgive you for being a man. Just for this episode. Okay, so to give us, I think, more details on the importance of having women leaders, our next speaker here is an epitome of an empowered woman who works hard to uplift the lives of the people around her. She is a registered medical technologist, a businesswoman, and the current mayor of the municipality of Domalinao in Zamboanga del Sur, Philippines. She began her community development work in 2013. Then she was called to lead the Women Empowerment Movement Rural Improvement Club, an organization of approximately 10,000 rural women in the province of Zamboanga del Sur. It has now grown to 42,000 members. She was eventually invited by the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women to speak in New York City about the club's journey. In 2017, the municipality of Malinao was recognized and awarded with its first ever Seal of Good Local Governance by the Department of Interior and Local Government. Friends, we have with us today the Malinao Mayor, Jonah Flor Sweet Sarillas. Mayor Sweet,
I'm,
if you're ready.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
you can hear you,
Hello?
Bo.
Okay. So thank you very much, Ash and Jules, for having me here. To my fellow speakers, our moderators, and the organizers of this event, good morning and good afternoon. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers for this virtual sharing of women's journey and their contribution to our society. And thank you for this rare opportunity given to me to share my journey as a public servant. I am Jonah Flor Sarillas, Municipal Mayor of Tumalinao, serving my second term of office. I'm a mother of 4 beautiful children and advocate of women and youth empowerment and environmental advocate. Before I proceed to my personal journey as a woman leader in public office, I just want to share some of the status of women in politics in the Philippines. So based on Philippine history, there were 2 Philippine women, the former President Corazon Aquino, our 11th president, and former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, our 14th president. According to the Philippine Commission on Women, while the country has made great strides in promoting and increasing women's political participation, with 2 women held the highest position in government, the proportion of women in politics or public office is still yet to meet the 30% or the critical mass, the needed percentage for a minority group to make influence decision making. From the same source, from 1998 to 2016, the percentage of women elected into public office is only from 16.1% to 21.44%. And in 2019, it's only 20.16%, which is 8,782 candidates are female. Currently, we have 7 women senators out of the 24. And then we have 10 for the provincial governors. We only have 10 out of 81, which is only about 12%. So because of underrepresentation, with the proportion of women in politics less than the considered critical mass, we are faced with these challenges. So women in position or in public office are only given women committees or for women-only portfolios. In the Philippines, Currently, we have only 2 cabinet positions headed by women, the Department of Tourism and Department of Education. The rest of the seats are occupied by men. And as much as we want to be heard, because of few numbers, some of our ideas go unheard or sidelined. Another challenge is work and life balance. For me, this is the most challenging part. Being a public servant, you are both the mother to your children and the mother of your town. You make plans, give directions to your family and your bigger family. And there are sacrifices you have to make, and most of it is the time for yourself and your family. Another challenge I say is that women are emotion driven. We make decisions mainly based in our emotions. I've been told many times that you're too kind, you're too forgiving, and some see it as a weakness. But for me, ruling by heart is never a weakness. Yes, there are many challenges. And sometimes it's hard for women to be heard in the place where men are taking are the majority. But it doesn't mean we cannot contribute much to the society. Sharing with you now my advocacies in women empowerment. So it was mentioned earlier that WIMBREC started 10,000 members and it grew into 40,000, and unfortunately the numbers decline now. So it is a federation of women who strive for peace, community empowerment, and sustainable development. Encourages activities for the welfare of family and community. The organization establishes linkages with various non-government as well as government agencies, both local and national, to bring relevant programs that can uplift the present lives of these rural women. Programs and trainings such as personal development, capacity building, development, financial literacy, management were given to the women. The organization also implemented programs funded by US and Australian aid. We also established local markets. So can you see it's Farmhurst Market, a venue to sell organic and produced processed products. This concept I learned from my IVLP program when we visited Vermont. We also established Tindahan Juana, where processed food and non-food products were displayed. Unfortunately, right after elections, some local chief executives did not support the program, so we have to close the markets. I hope, though, that we can reopen in the future. Some of the women are still engaged in businesses, mostly in agriculture, and for those who are into processed goods, online is the way to sell their products. While we were doing activities to capacitate women in business, we found that there are still women suffering from abuses. So we partnered with LAMP. It's a legal na advokasya para sa mamayang Pilipino, a group of volunteer lawyers and law students that goes to the communities to give free legal seminar and legal counseling to both men and women. Through this program, even men now are familiar with laws against women and children. And our police hotline are already getting reports and complaints from men who are experiencing abuses. For my youth empowerment program, I Mag-Aral project. It's Filipino students at the age of 15, according to the survey conducted by the Program of International Assessment in 28, ranked last among the 79 countries. And this is very alarming. Sagip ka mag-aral means rescue a classmate. It's the driving force of the program is to teach struggling learners who are struggling to read and comprehend. So reading with comprehension is a vital tool in understanding as well as conveying proper message. Sagip ka mag-aral started with 28 student volunteers and 4 teacher volunteers. It's a buddy system, 1 student teacher, 1 student learner. Volunteer DepEd teachers, on the other hand, serves program supervisors. They help with the module formulation, assessment on learning needs, and evaluating the student learners on their progress. So the activity started to gain attention from parents and other students in the barangays. So from 1-to-1 student-teacher ratio, it grew bigger. And the number of student volunteer teachers also increased from 28 to 50. At present, the program is still ongoing, catering to quite an increasing number of eager student learners and helping also children with their modules, especially this time of the pandemic when we are doing the modular system. Since some parents have no education or if they have educational attainment, it's lower than their children's grade level. Another advocacy that we have is Saka sa kaugmaon na hamugaway. It's Saka means to climb, kaugmaon is future, and hamugaway is brighter. So we go to far-flung communities, climb to give brighter future to the children. This initiative came to reality because of the core members' aim of bringing joy and happiness to the children in the far-flung communities. We believe that the path to every child's brighter future is made by walking. We want to bring smiles and hope and teach these children to dream big beyond their existing lives in the far-flung. So the group bring activities to the far-flung communities such as feeding, community assemblies, medical mission, gift giving, fun and games are the activities that we do. We select communities that are out of reach and deprived from some of the government's basic services. We visited Muslim and Subanen communities last year, and most of these far-flung places are reached by crossing rivers, crossing seas, and long walks, which is about 2 to 5 hour walks. Aside from the mentioned activities that mainly involve children, the group also worked with former rebels. We facilitated workshops that resulted to identifying their common dream of getting married. And to make the dream come true, we partnered with the military and some of the generous individuals. At the activity, we name it Damgo, which is dream, Sai story, and Kalipay is happens. All our programs under Saka sa Kaugmaon ng Humagaway are in partnership with the AFP, since these places are considered as LCAC areas and it's under the influence or presence of Communist Party, or they call it the red areas. And for my environmental advocacy, my deep desire to encourage the youth to actively promote environmental protection and conservation, my friends from the Department of Environmental and Natural Resources and other key agencies co-founded Salom sa Kaugmaon. Salom means dive and Kaugmaon is future, to dive deeper into the future. This program was established mainly to foster young leaders in biodiversity conversation from the local communities. Lectures, hands-on activities, as well as capacitating young leaders with the necessary knowledge and skill and ability in organizing their own marine camp with the same mission of Salom are done by key facilitators and organizers. So Envi movement is the result of Salom sa Kaugmaon, and this is initiated by the youth who are willing to volunteer and raise awareness for the protection of the environment. So before I end my presentation, I want to share this video of some of the inspiring women I've worked with. Kindly please share the video.
Lumpia gandaw sa glawnan niyo, maayong adlaw kaninyong tanan. Ako si Nida Gandasang Sangkaon, usa ka presidente sa Pitpungunan Libon Subanen, means Unity of Subanen Women. So diha sa ako ang pagka-leader, akong nakita nga kinahanglan ako silang tabangan. Kung unsa man ang akong makaya para sa ako ang mga katribo, kinahanglan ako ni siyang himuon nga among ginapreserbar ang amo ang kultura, among ginapadayon, ginapalambo ang amo ang kultura, pinaagi sa mga accessories o pakaya namo nga mga tribong Subanen. So kung inyong makita ang mga kababayan, doon na namin gitawag o sustainable livelihood. Kung kini nakaabot na kini sa mga lagyo nga dapit nakaabot na kini sa mga silingan nga mga lungsod o kini pinaagi sa amo ang pagpaningkamot nga unta tahuron o ilhon ang mga paningkamot sa mga kababayan. Maningkamot ta nga muabag para sa kalambuan sa pamilya o para sa kalambuan sa ato ang katilingman. Ako usa ka leader diha sa amo ang tribo nga subanin o usa ka leader diha sa kahukuman sa mga kababayan.
I am Ging Baya sa lungsod sa Dimataling. Usa sa mga leader sa mga kababayan sa WIMRIC, Women Empowerment Movement Rural Improvement Club. Ano na kami federation sa tanang mga kababayan na compose siya organization. Ano na kami gi-apilan nga seminar bahin sa massage. So 18 ka mga kababayan kuyog sa uban nga kalalakinan ni graduate mi atong 2019 ug karon ang among mga kauban nakasugo na sila kasapi nini. Dinhi sa lungsod sa Dimataling i-establish unya ang isa ka oil facility gamit ang lemongrass. Ang among vision ni ana number 1 distributor sa essential oil sa lemongrass. So kini nga venture na mga business, hopefully makatabang ni sa among panginabuhian, makatabang po ni siya pag pahiuli sa kinaiyahan kay mananuman taog tanglad aron ang tanglad makasolve na siya sa problem sa kanang pagbaha kay instead ang mga ato mga kauban walay ginabuhat, so mananom na lang silang tanglad.
My name is Ruby Faranda Yundon. I am the former municipal mayor of Cabina, Zamboanga del Sur, and I am also the president and founder of Cabina Education Rangers, and presently the president of Saka sa Kaugmaon ng Hamugaway Initiative. Sa Saka sa Kaugmaon ng Hamugaway, among ginaadto ang mga komunidad nga layo kaayo. So kami, kauban sa organization, wadto sa mga lugar to bring food, to bring school supplies, medicines, and even doctors and nurses para maghatag kanila og serbisyo. Amo usab conduct ang psychosocial activities para sa mga parents, sama sa mga ginikanan nga kinahanglan food nga naay mga istorya na ay maminaw sa ilahang mga pangindahay sa kinabuhi, but especially ang mga kabataan gyud. As a woman or as a mother, this is my life purpose. I want to bring this purpose to the communities, especially to the children, and to give them hope na ang kinabuhi, kinahanglan sa tao mo dream, kinahanglan pa na ito kabutang ng atong mga aspirations, and even sharing with them, talking with them, interacting with them, and seeing and listening, seeing their smiles and listening to their stories. Dako na kay inspiration na mahatag para namo ang hope na there is a better life. Another purpose or mission for me as a mother and a woman is to raise awareness. I mean, that somehow, that someone somewhere in the far flung needs to be given more attention, needs to be given more love, and needs to be given more hope.
So that's the video of the 3 women that I've worked with. They have different inspiring stories. And Nida is a Subanen women leader. She went back to school at the age of 39 years old just to prove to the community that the Subanen women are not voiceless and not educated. And Ging Baya, the former mayor, even when her term ended as a public servant, she continued her public service, continued her learning, and shared what she learned to the women in their community. And then Ruby went beyond her town, beyond her borders, beyond the accessible road, just to give smiles, hopes, and dreams to the children in the far-flung communities. So yes, even though right now there are few women who are in the position, you can still do so much. So whatever status or educational level you have, you can be a woman leader. You just need to believe what is right and serve with all your heart. So thank you very much. May we continue to support each other. Happy Women's Month.
Thank you so much, Mayor Sweet Ceriles, for that very compelling presentation. That's very inspirational. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing in your municipality. Ash, what's your takeaway with Mayor's presentation?
We can see. Thank you so much for all of that you shared, Mayor Sweet. As we can see, there's a lot that we can do if we just let women be leaders. And tama yung sinabi ni Mayor Sweet na parang minsan yung emotions, parang dina-downplay natin. But we can do a lot by just bringing our heart in the process and bringing our emotions into place. Which cannot only be done by women, but also if you're a man or if you're queer, basta you let your heart, lead the way. Thank you so much,
And
Mayor
we need,
Sweet.
yes, and we need the support of men. So please support us.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Mayor Sweet. I will see you again later during the open forum. Thank you so much. Okay. Now to our viewers, if you have questions for our speakers, you may send them through the comment section on Facebook. And if you're tuned in via Zoom, you may send your questions through the chat box. Now we proceed to our next speaker. Our speaker made it her mission to encourage more girls to choose to take technology courses and to help more women working in STEM related occupations to stay and advance in the workplace. This year, she will also be assuming the role of National Project Coordinator for the We Rebuild project for women entrepreneurs. Before working with the International Labor Organization or ILO, she was the first CEO and public affairs head of education startup educacion.ph, a website that helps young people find the right education for the jobs they aspire for. This was where she had first-hand experience of leading a tech company alongside other male founders and CEOs. Prior to working in a tech startup, she worked for more than 7 years as the chief of the Advocacy and Publications Division of the Institute for Labor Studies, the Policy Research and Advocacy arm of the Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE. At the Institute, she was the focal person for the Joint Program on Youth Employment and Migration with the United Nations, which focused on helping young people find jobs. Our speaker holds a bachelor's degree in political science from De La Salle University, a Bachelor of Laws degree from the Philippine Christian University, and a social entrepreneurship diploma from the Ateneo de Manila. Our next speaker is the National Project Coordinator of Women in STEM Workforce Readiness and Development Program of the International Labor Organization. And this year, she will also be assuming the role of National Project Coordinator for the We Rebuild project for women entrepreneurs. Friends, here is Miss Lights Viloria. Miss Lights, go ahead.
Thank you, Jules. Let me just flash my presentation. Can you see my screen now? Yes. All right. Okay, so good afternoon to everybody. So first and foremost, let me congratulate the organizers of this forum, the International Studies Department of Miriam College, American Spaces, the U.S. Embassy Alumni Exchange Program, for organizing this forum of bringing together the IVLP women for these important issues that women confront today. So today I come to you, I know you've heard the introduction, but I come to you now as the National Project Coordinator of the Women in STEM program. Can you see my screen? Not sure if you can.
Yes, ma'am, we can see it. We can see it po.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You can click
So,
full screen po.
that one I cannot see. Hold on. Full screen. Is that better now? Are you seeing who are
The
your
slides,
STEM role models?
yeah, we can see it. It's still the same, but yeah, that will do po. Or we
All
can
right.
share from our end if you want.
Hindi, sige. It's minimized.
Okay. All right, ma'am, go ahead na lang.
All right. So, who are your STEM role models? No. So, whenever we think about science, no, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, for those who are not familiar with STEM, no, some of you might remember these two. No. So, if you are familiar on this STEM role model, please feel free to place it in the chat box if you can guess who these STEM women are. No. So I don't see the chat box, but I hope you're chatting it there, no? So these two women are one of when we think about science, women in science. The first woman here, the older woman here, is the first woman that we think of, and this is Madame Curie, and this is her daughter. This is her daughter, Irene Curie, who so happens also won the Nobel Prize. Both of them won the Nobel Prize. Her mom won the Nobel Prize with her father, Pierre Curie, for physics, for their discovery of radium, while her daughter, Irene, will win it a few years after for chemistry with her husband. So this is how we think about STEM role models, and this is how we want to think about how we are inspiring more women and girls. But how many of us have mothers who are Nobel Prize winners, who can inspire us to do this? Like after the next winner of the Nobel Prize for physics came, I think, only this year. So Madame Curie won the prize in 1903, and it was only recently that a new winner, new physics Nobel Prize winner for physics was announced. So imagine how much we need role models in science. So this was one of the goals of the IVLP program, the Hidden No More IVLP program, Hidden No More. No, it's the Hidden No More Women in STEM program. It was basically based on the movie Hidden Figures. It's a true story of three African American mathematicians who helped get the first American into space orbit. After seeing this movie, several embassies of the United States decided that this is something that they could bring to the respective countries. And at the same time, it would be good to bring together the different women in STEM from all over the world to show them that, that they are not alone, that they are not hidden, and there are other women who are doing the same work and they should continue this work. But let's take a step back and see, like, how many really are the women in STEM. No? So here are just a few numbers that we have from the ILO, and we asked how many women work in STEM. Well, as you can see here, Georgia comes up as number one in terms of the percentage of the number of women in STEM occupations at
Miss
55.6%.
Lights? Sorry. Miss Lights? Sorry.
Yes?
Ma'am, hindi po gumagalaw yung slides ninyo.
Oh, sorry.
Ay,
Oh my
okay.
God.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Did it move na?
Yes, it's on fourth slide na po.
It's on the table, right?
Yes po. Tama ba?
Okay. All right. So we have 55.6% of women in Georgia occupying STEM occupations. But you have to note here, while this is a great percentage that we have, you have to look here how many percent of these occupations, how many of these total number of jobs are in STEM. It's only 6.4. The country with the biggest number of STEM occupations is in the United States, which I could imagine that's why they have started the Hidden No program and other STEM programs, no, They have 15.4 occupations that are STEM related, with 47.7 of these occupations being held by women. But of course, having this number, this is a number of, decades, of being built up. In the Philippines, we have, we're not far away, with 47.1. But wait, before we rejoice on this, how many of these occupations, um, how many of these jobs are part of the total employment of the Philippines? We only have 3.7%, no, of the total employment in STEM occupations, which means, we need to work more, on promoting STEM, not only as an occupation in the country, but also among women. So I looked even further, no? So yes, okay, that's great, 47.7. What kind of jobs do these women have, So the occupations that were considered in those numbers, so you have your physicists, your mathematicians, computer ICT professionals, which we know is very much needed right now, architects, engineers, life science, health professionals. And where was the bulk of these numbers? If you can see down here, no, 214,000 were more on nurses. So we have to think about, like, given the demand of STEM right now, with the change of the demands of the future of work, and at the same time, um, the demands that the pandemic has been calling for. We need not just our nurses, but we need more STEM professionals who are working together to be able to design the solutions, not only that this pandemic demands, but also in terms of sustainable development. So, according to the Gina Davis Institute, there are several factors that increase STEM intention. You really have to make it very purposive if you want to invite women and girls to get into STEM. So, I'll just enumerate through this. No? So, one is, for women, it's important that you see STEM as serving the community, or seeing STEM as family flexible, right? If you see that your job will affect the demands of work, it's hard for you to get into a career in STEM. Another one, which is, I think, for me, is very important, personally knowing somebody in STEM. For women, I'm sure the women here can, you always remember a role model, that you say, I want to be like that woman when I grow up, or I want to be like her. I want to follow the same career path that she has gone. So role models are very important for us women, and especially for STEM. If you see that a woman has been able to do this, a woman in STEM has been able to do this, it's easy for you to envision yourself as a woman in STEM. Another one is having teachers that encourage STEM. Well, if you have very few women in STEM, most probably you also will have very few women teachers in science. Another one is having friends that encourage you to take STEM. Having family members, maybe it's your dad, like to give an example, Pierre and Marie Curie encouraging their daughter to get into science. Also, having a STEM role model in media is important. No, who remembers Scully from X Files? Who remembers what you call this, Doctor from the series? Who's the neuroscientist who actually is also an actress for a science show. No, so these are all important, no? Important factors to increase STEM intention. So some people would ask, like, where does this preference, where does this discrimination, where does this stereotyping on STEM come from, especially for women and girls? So um, the research would show that it's about the leaky pipeline. Originally, young people or kids are very much interested in science, but as they go along their journey into science, this starts to fade away. The more times that they are disappointed across their education and up to their careers, they start losing that interest. So One is stereotypes, no? The stereotypes that, parents, teachers, social norms, media representations place on women in STEM has an effect, on how women and girls perceive STEM. Another one is role congruency, no? So we girls were raised with a community orientation. We are raised to care, we are raised to care for others, and community-oriented individuals tend to avoid careers wherein it's more seen as solo, no? Like somebody who is an individual contributor, someone who does work by themselves, Another one is work family challenges, no? So we are raised to value work, and which enables you to spend more time with your family. There's that guilt factor when we've spent more time for work rather than with our families. And that creates also that barrier, or at the same time, that discouraging factor. Another one is gender discrimination. I have seen so many times, especially in male dominated ICT companies, wherein, you have one or two women. So when I was CEO of Education, I didn't realize that most of the CEOs who were uh, leading IT startups then were all men, and we were like one or two women who were CEOs of an IT startup. And for some women who are not used to being around, other male leaders, that can be a discouraging factor. And finally, choice. Now, let's say you are a girl, you are a woman who has very high STEM competencies. You're very good at math, and most probably you're also good in your verbal abilities. And given the choice of having a STEM career and having verbal abilities, and given all that I mentioned before, most probably a woman would choose to get into a career option that is popular among women. So these are just some of the causes, and so it is with these items in mind that the Women in STEM program of the ILO was created. No? So in 2019, we came up with the Future of Work report, which was agreed upon by a global commission of leaders, employers, and workers. And we were all in agreement that new forces are transforming the world of work. And technological changes, climate change, demographic transitions, and now the pandemic, these changes that are transforming the world of work are also transforming the skills that are required for these jobs. And with the change of these skills, so you've heard of the automation of jobs and all that, right? When jobs are begin to be automated, you will require a higher level of skills from workers. And based on our study, so in 2016, we had this study on jobs that are at risk of automation. So we found out that 89%, particularly for the Philippines, 89% of the jobs that are in these industries will be automated. So one of those industries that will be automated is the call center industry, and I'm sure you have experienced that already now. You hardly have customer service in the big call centers now. You would have your chatbots, right? And what happens to the jobs that you know these chatbots replaced, right? And so for a customer service person, you would require not just answering basic questions that can be googled. You will have to be resolving disputes, which will require analytical skills, right? Critical skills and creativity. Also, with the fourth industrial revolution, there are already a certain set of skills that you need to have. So it's thinking skills, interacting skills, managing ourselves, and leading skills. And these all require key STEM skills in critical thinking, creativity, communication. And women need to start working on this, need to start upskilling to be able to take advantage of these opportunities in the workplace. As you have heard also from Mayor Sweet a while ago, aside from these challenges, women in general, and especially during this pandemic, uh, experience an additional burden, that is not talked about a lot, because I guess for us women, we think that it's considered part of our job to do this. But actually, if you think about it, like how much time which has been allotted for these responsibilities at home, juggling all these responsibilities, could have gone, to career opportunities that we let to pass by. No? In one of our studies on care work, do you know? No, do you know that 16.4 billion hours are actually spent on unpaid care work? Imagine like for every time you start washing the dishes, take care of your kids. Have you ever counted how many hours that is equivalent of? This is unpaid care work, and that is equivalent to 2 billion people working 8 hours a day for free. And women do 76% of unpaid care work. Although the studies will show that that has decreased and men's work has increased, but it's so small, it's so small that they say it will take a quantum leap, like 200% of the effort, 200 years for us to be able to catch up. Um, and as I mentioned, no, and especially for STEM, because of these perceptions on STEM, women lack a significant number of role models, which excludes women from working in STEM-related industries. Their perceptions and also the limited mentoring opportunities. If you have limited role models, you also have limited mentoring opportunities, which while you may have a lot of women starting off, entry level on STEM related occupations, it takes time for them, at some point in time when they get married, when they have kids, they start to leave the workplace and instead decide on their family duties. And so instead of having more CEOs, more women CEOs, more women COOs, um, it stops at a certain point in time. And so for the women in STEM program, we wanted to improve that. We wanted to ensure that women, continue going up the corporate ladder and continue bringing their expertise into the workplace. And most importantly, and so we have heard a lot of talk on diversity, and this is where, especially now during the pandemic, having diverse groups, thinking together, coming from different perspectives, contributing towards a common goal is so important now, especially if we are looking for innovations in business, new ideas. I'm sure you're familiar that for countries wherein a lot of women leaders have been leading the way. They've had made success. They have been successful in pushing through, their policies in terms of supporting the countries, especially during this pandemic. And so it's also something that we need to look out for. So the Women in STEM program is in 3 countries. We're in Thailand, Indonesia, and in the Philippines, we concentrated first on the ICT industry. So number one, what have we been doing? So we wanted to remove the barriers to enroll and graduate more girls and women in STEM. When we first did this, we had some challenges in recruiting women to get into ICT trainings. ICT trainings parang to, ano? This is not even your full 4-year programs. And so we had to change the approach. The myth is true, that women they are afraid of STEM, no? And so we had to improve it, and we had to customize the way we communicated to women to show that this is something that women can do, that women have opportunities to do it. And so in 2018, we started work on the hashtag Women Can Do It, Women Can Do IT, scholarships in technology, in cooperation with the technology, with TESDA, no? And we repackaged it, and at the same time, we worked with schools who were willing, to prioritize women for these occupations, And, we got a lot of interest. I think on our first Facebook post, we got 500,000 all women likers, just interested in saying, I want to do this in our town. Like, do you have slots here in Cebu and all that? No? So that's one, you have to improve existing communication channels, particularly for schools to engage more girls and women into STEM programs. Um, and so during the pandemic, so because I had also a quota of the number of women who will graduate from this program, we had to rethink our strategy, So instead of going to school, the great thing about being in ICT, it's so agile in the sense that only a few months, when when the lockdown happened, we were able to transition into an ICT platform. The great thing was that Tesla, had already an online platform wherein we were able to transfer, this scholarship in to their online platform using a learning management system. And so I think it was a blessing in disguise because more women had more time, and wanted to enrich themselves while being stuck at home. We had full classes from having difficulties recruiting in our first 2 years. We were actually able to recruit 100%, for this training. And so I can tell you, so this is in web development and creative web design, as of last year, we have at least 200 women who learned how to code, including 25 OFWs coming from the Middle East, coming from the Middle East, and also other countries, that took the time, to learn how to code HTML, JavaScript, and all that. Number two, so we also wanted to improve the school to work transition. Yes, you have a certificate in this training, but will you be able to get a job after? And so we created career awareness programs and provided workplace exposure in cooperation with the Game Development Association, the Animation Council. So we work with the industry associations for this. And of course, in terms of the curriculum, it's one thing you market it, but it's another thing that you have to improve the way you learn STEM. I'm sure a lot of us have had bad memories, memorizing all these science terms and trying to solve these problems. Maybe there is another way. There is another way to learn STEM and integrate STEM. And so we strengthen STEM competencies for workforce readiness. So we were training with work in mind, no? By integrating STEM and TVET in cooperation with the Center for Integrated STEM of the UP College of Education. This was where my IVLP experience was very useful, no. So this was in our visit in Orlando, Florida, where we visited STEM magnet schools. We also visited the University of Central Florida and the first Lego team of Orlando, Florida. So these are three phases of STEM at work. Phases that you never imagined. I'm sure you imagined STEM to be what? Doctors, engineers, right? But these were all this was a different angle to STEM. So on the left side, you have a machinist from the University of Central Florida. Whenever a student wants to come up, has this idea of what they want to print on the 3D printer, he tries to, okay, what do you want? What's the purpose of this innovation? And he helps them craft it. And then they do it on their fabrication lab wherein they make the tool. It might be a screw or something, a machine. And he was bragging on how many inventions have been made already in that lab, based only on some wild idea of students. So imagine, so this is the hidden STEM economy. These are your machinists, these are your technicians. They all need these STEM skills to make it happen. Another one is the first Lego team, no, in Orlando, Florida. These kids are explaining to us, what they did for their robots. it's important at an early age, that you are able to explain processes. And this is a STEM skill, right? This is communication at work, communicating a process. And if kids like them can do that, adults can also do it as well. And finally, this last picture, this is a girl who is not majoring in STEM, but in theater. But she wanted to create a model, for the stage. She wanted to demonstrate how the stage would look like. And she prepared the schematics for the 3D design of her stage, right? And she needed, of course, drafting skills. This is spatial reasoning, right? And even though she was not a STEM professional, she needed these skills. And so coming back to the Philippines, I said, wait, these are skills, these are skills that our TVET professionals or technicians should have, and they should have as early as now, especially if the demands of the future of work are changing. They have to have some modicum of these skills. And so this was how we designed the STEM and TVET curriculum guide. For every TESTA program, whether you are doing a program on well-being or on web development or on massage, there is always a STEM component to it. And so what is that STEM component, and how do you make sure that these trainees have this skill? And what we discovered, so we've been doing these workshops since last year. And what we discovered was that all of them found STEM competencies in their respective trainings. So for example, welding. What is the science between putting together two metals, right? Maybe you would say, welding lang yan. Ay, TESDA lang yan. But actually, they are working with science. They are working with the practical applications of science. And now we want to take it a next step, right? Like provide them with the skills that will enable them to go beyond what they know and later on, be able to think critically. So for instance, what if the tools that you have are no longer there? What do you use? What do you substitute? So you use the scamper model, right? Substitute, correlate, collaborate, and all that, right? So we provide them with this STEM thinking skills so that they would be able to learn better and also perform at the workplace better. So since we've done that, so we trained in December 125 TVET trainers for curriculum, 120 TVET trainers on pedagogies, and finally, just recently, 120 for English for STEM in cooperation with the Regional English Language Office in American Spaces. And finally, we wanted to increase access to training opportunities for women to advance in the workplace. So these are the ones who are already in STEM workplaces. No? And so we worked with the different companies in order to help women. So these are women engineers, for instance, at Emerson, to stay in the workplace and help them advance. No? And these are some of the companies that have already participated in these soft skills training. So yeah, no. So more than 124 as of 2020 pa lang yan. But in total, we have done it for 500 women already in the different companies. And next to that, so we wanted to go beyond skills, but we wanted to make sure, that the policies are in place. So this one is our call to action in cooperation with Investing in Women and the Philippine Business Coalition for our call to action for diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So at the end, so what can you do? So here are just a few points that you can do, not only as a woman in STEM, but as a woman, as a woman in the workplace, as a woman in the academe. So number one, count. Always be conscious. One thing I've learned in the past few years, I'm always counting how many women are in the panel, how many men are in the panel. Point out where there are imbalances. Like, hey, I noticed that this is an all male panel. Maybe we can add more women. Be aware of biases and also in yourself, right, against other women, right, and try to counteract them. And if you have faced challenges as a woman leader, consider that as a valuable training for you. Always think of it as a learning moment. Also include underrepresented people in formative groups, whether it's women or for to ensure also diversity. You always have to be aware of that. Value colleagues and amplify them. Amplify voices. When you find that other people are not heard, be the one who leads that amplification. And finally, foster awareness of diversity issues similar to what we are doing now. Most importantly, use your privilege to open the doors for others. With that, I leave you with this line from a woman in STEM, Melinda Gates, from her book, The Power of Lift. She said, like, when you lift up women, you lift up humanity. So I leave this challenge to our male allies here, help us amplify these voices of women, whether they're a leader or not in it. And also, and most importantly, for the women out here, we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our children, we owe it to our daughters, to our nieces, to be able to lift up women and empower them with these opportunities in the community. If I have time, maybe I can play the video of the Women in STEM program for the stories of the women in STEM beneficiaries. Thank you.
Bilang babae, kailangang lumaban, tuloy lang ang buhay kahit anong problema, magkakaroon ka ng magandang trabaho, basta huwag ka lang mag-quit.
Importante po para mapaunlad po yung mga sarili natin, lalo na sa mga kababaihan na huwag matakot, ilabas po yung talent na meron sila.
I think that learning is a lifelong thing that every woman should really consider.
The Women in STEM program is a program that seeks to attract more women into careers in technology and to help women in this technology industry to stay and advance in this workplace. We do this through, number one, through scholarships that we provide to women in courses in technology such as animation, game development, software programming, impact sourcing, and web development. For women who are working in the technology industry, we are providing soft skills training to help women stay in the workforce and at the same time advance in this industry.
So, nung nag-join ako, natutong mag-computer. Sa training kasi nila, meron dyang e-commerce, website design, logo design. Tinuruan kami kung paano magkaroon ng online job. Tapos yun, nakakuha ko ng client, gumawa ko ng website.
Wala namang dapat ikatakot, diba? So, if you're not going to try, hindi mo malalaman kung magwo-work. Lalo na kung talagang ang gusto mo, yung heart mo nandun sa ginagawa mo.
Kapag nag-train ka and kapag pinush mo yung sarili mo to do more than sa inaakala mo, marami ka palang kayang gawin and marami kang taong pwedeng matulungan.
First time ko po dito kasi parang wala talagang alam, wala akong background sa 3D. Yun lang alam ko mag-drawing. Tapos ng mga araw na lumilipas, parang siyempre pagbago ka mahirap. Pero nakakaya ko po.
Ayun, mas nag-widen yung perspective ko dun sa animation kasi mas marami palang nagagawa nga yung sa 3D. And ngayon, pag nanonood ako ng mga likes ni cartoons, natutuwa ako sa kanyang panoorin kasi alam ko na siya ngayon kung paano nila ginagawa.
I was never a gamer like my classmates. Pero, I love playing word games. Naisip ko, it would be nice siguro to understand how word games are done and how I could come up with simple games for children to learn how to read.
Women are more nurturing. They are the heart of the organization. They are more inclined to their emotions, which helps also in knowing which decisions to take.
We look at this as a great opportunity for women now to understand the opportunities that we have in the technology sector. There's still a lot of process of work that has to be done, but I believe that DICT and ILO has actually seen the great potential of this program.
TESDA is encouraging other women to grab this opportunity by exposing them to the field and motivating them that this is now the demand in the industry. I am very grateful to ILO for choosing TESDA as one of their partners in this program.
Excellence and determination to excel in a certain area does not depend sa gender naman ng tao. So women can do anything beyond what we can imagine naman talaga.
Thank you so much, Miss Lights, for that presentation. And we agree it's very important to mainstream STEM among women because it is unfortunately still a very masculinized profession. So a reminder for our viewers, if you have questions for our speakers, you may send them through the comment section on Facebook, or if you're tuned in via Zoom, you may send your questions through the Zoom chat box as well. So Jules, let's now call
Yeah,
back our speakers for the
sure.
panel.
Okay, let's call in Barbara, Aisha, and Mayor Sweet. Hello, everyone.
Hi everyone.
All right. Okay, so for our question and answer, I'll be asking a question and then Ash later on will do it alternately. For first question, anyone can answer this question. This is from Aliana Ortua from Miriam College. The question is, you have two questions actually. What are your perceptions of the words femininity and masculinity? That's the first question. And the next question is, how will we be able to have a borderless world with our current mindset of feminism? Anyone would like to answer?
If I may to step in, I think those questions are really kind of philosophical ones. So I'm really would like to step back and actually give floor to others. But I just wanted to mention I have like 5 minutes of my time right now. So if there are any questions directed directly to me, I would be very happy to answer them if there are such. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Barbara, for saying that. So before our speakers would like to answer our first question, we'd like to address the first question for Miss Barbara. The question for you, Barbara, is what is the reaction of the women's groups in Poland regarding the abortion ruling? And what efforts or strategies are they doing to lobby against this ruling? Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you. Well, first of all, there were many protests, and most of all they were organized by the group which is called the strike with the women's strike. So they already organized protests in 2016 when similar amendments to a law were about to be introduced, and there were huge protests, so-called black protests, black marches. And they tried to sort of do exactly the same, but this time there were really huge, sort of spontaneous demonstrations, and they took time. They took places for more than 2 weeks, and right now they also they are organized on in different places. What is really stunning at that time was really the very fearful reaction of police against those who took part in this protest. So this, I think, a huge change that took part in Poland. There are numerous networks and groups which are trying to help women to get abortion in different states. So you can find such groups, but on the other hand, it's gross like private initiative of people who would like to help other women get their access to abortion. So right now you can see how this biggest organization, the Women's Strike, how they evolve, and what steps are trying to make. So also the leaders of this organization, they're also under constant attack by the pro-government media in Poland. So this is also specific to see how women's organizations are targeted by the government institutions.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for that answer. If you'd like to give a quick answer on the first question, go ahead. But if there's none so far in our list, we have one more question for you.
Sure.
Ash, would you like to read this one? It's number 5.
Right. So another question for Barbara: what are the programs the Poland government promoted to prevent unwanted pregnancies? How Poland disseminates sex education to its citizens? So this is a question from Lee R. of Miriam College, Quezon City.
Thank you. I mean, as far as I know, that there is nothing specific which was added after the ruling. So nothing specific was sort of support. It's actually the opposite. It's quite the narrative that these are the parents that decide about the education of children, which means basically that any specific additional sex education is not available at schools at the moment. There's so-called it's program about I don't remember how it was called, like information about the your life in family, like it's like family life. This is a sort of program that which was available at least when I was at school many years ago, and I think it's still the same. So nothing special was added to that, and in fact any private NGOs which are trying to reach children with sex education program, they are in fact also targeted, and they have really huge difficulties in accessing schools and teachers who would like to teach them this specific very professional knowledge actually to be needed to be given to children. But what is also important thing, no changes were introduced to support women who are now forced to give birth to children with very severe damages. Very often they're going to die just after giving a birth. Meaning the children are going to die. So this is an extremely hard situation. This is a case of a huge heroism that women were forced to, and I don't think that any specific support that are going to be given to them.
All right, thank you, Barbara, for shedding light on the conditions of women in Poland. So I think that's all the questions that we have for you. Thank you so much again for your
Thank you
time
for having
today.
me. Have a great discussion.
It's a pleasure.
Have a good time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you so much. So just to get back to the earlier question, the first question, and we just read the question again. This is from Aliana Ortua from Miriam College. Her question is, what are your perceptions of the words femininity and masculinity? How will we all able to have a borderless world with our current mindset of feminism? So this is an open question for any member of the panel if you want to answer.
Yeah, let me take a stab at that.
Yes, Miss
Yeah.
Lights.
So for me, the words femininity and masculinity, like these are traits describing um, characteristics that are identified to these words, right? So you can, anybody can have feminine and masculine because this is depending on what is your reference point, right? What is your reference point on calling something feminine versus masculine, right? And sometimes depending on your background as a person, right, sometimes you describe it so it has a tendency to fall on certain stereotypes. And so I think we're moving towards I'd like to believe that we're moving towards that kind of attitude now, that it's regardless of whether it's a feminine trait or a masculine trait, right? um, it's about how you perform, right, in the workplace, in the community. How will we have on the second question, on a borderless world with our current mindset of feminism? I think it's very important that we have programs like like for instance the program I had on Hidden No More, right? And so we were like, people coming from women coming from different countries, just sharing our experiences. You realize, like, when our colleague from Turkey was mentioning, the difficulties that women experience there, you, as a Filipina, you feel fortunate. And that was my experience at the IVLP when I heard the other women in STEM, especially in the Middle Eastern countries, like I was feeling like, oh my gosh, like I am still lucky, and we should use that privilege to also help others. And I think with whatever mindset that you have, it's being part of programs, among women, and just discussing, just sharing these opportunities, these possibilities, right? You can create that borderless world wherein we are all collaborating as a network of women, as a network of individuals, towards the common goal of supporting others, right? So, yeah, that's for me.
Thank you so much, Miss Lights. Anybody else from the panel?
Yes, I think um, my perceptions about femininity and masculinity is totally about gender equality norms. I think in Turkey, in Philippines, in Poland, we have lots of gender codes, gender roles. They are coming from our society. But when we talking about femininity, it's I think it's not understand very well from children to older people. We should disseminate gender equality from children to elder people, from school, from workplace, from society, in everywhere. I think the boardless word, it's just totally depends on gender equality. When I mentioned the Global Gender Gap Report Index, the all global index say that there is no country, real country, to achieve gender equality. And we are just same, we are talking the same things: human trafficking, domestic violence, femicide, and life work balance, political participation of women. The main challenges is coming from our society, but it's not the problem of Turkey, problem of Poland and the other countries. It's our global problem, and we should work together with women and men. With together, we could we create a more equal and more inclusive world together, with no discrimination and with really gender equal world. I think we should put gender equality courses to children's program from primary school to universities. And I'm also a STEM graduation people. I'm a management engineer in Turkey. It's very rare as a woman engineer in Turkey. I'm also worked as a parts and materials engineer at a private factory. In my specific experiences shows me that the gender roles, especially in our workplace, is very difficult, very big challenges for women, because the workplace, especially factories, engineering departments, STEM areas are very masculinity areas, because the all especially 80% are male dominated places. It's approximately masculinity area. We need gender parity in all places. Work is one of the most important ones, because when we are working in a place, private sector, public sector, we have lots of obstacles. Even if we are single, but if we have a mother like me, I'm also have a children, is a provide children, and I had very challenges, and I need to finish my work because of the caring of my provide children. There is no mechanisms to provide women's in work life, and we are dominated to caring of our house, our children's and our lives. This is the biggest problem, I think. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Aisha. So our next question is directed to Mayor Sweet. So Mayor Sweet, the question for you is based on the data you've presented a while ago, women representation until now is less in number. What do you think are the reasons behind this limited representation of women in the government and even in the private sector?
I think it's because in this country we see a lot of leaders from the start, even based in histories, that it's really men-dominated country. So even on corporate world or even in politics, and I think it also goes with the culture, because mostly even like right now working with rural women, it's always about men making the decisions. So I think that's mainly the reason why some of our constituents prefer men over women. But hopefully we can change that. I mean, so far there are women leaders who are standing up and working by our hearts, telling that we are concerned more, we care more, and like what IC mentioned earlier, that women leaders right now in the whole world, those presidents who are women, are doing so much more, doing better addressing this pandemic. So I think that's the reason why there's still more men in this country. First, because in this country, most of the women still believes in the decisions of men, and it's still dominated by men. Everyone, like, we're still less than 30% now. Women represent about less than 30% in our country.
Thank you so much, Mayor Sweet, for answering that question. And by the way, would like to recognize and thank Ms. Ash Presto for co-moderating this session for today. Let's proceed to the next question. This is for Ms. Lights. With the alarming rise in the number of cases of domestic violence towards women during the time of the pandemic, how do you think the international community can address to solve this issue?
Yes, I will start.
Go ahead, Ms. Aisha.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I think the governments all over the world should open women's shelters. And the number of women's shelter is very rare in the world. In Turkey, we have 145, totally 145. It's very, very low. Also, in my country, we in Turkey ratify Istanbul Convention. It's very important. Also, Turkey signed CEDAW and CEDAW additional protocol, but the implementation is not full. Especially in COVID-19 pandemics, we observed that the local governments and the women organizations have a very significant role, but it's not enough because I mentioned in the program CADES implementations, women protection system and notification platform, but it's now all women in Turkey. Also, all women have not smartphones, we know, because most of women living in rural area and they don't have a smartphones. I think that international community should be work and organize together. As you know, 8th March is coming, and this is Women's March. And in this day, globally, we are saying the same word. Women are together. Women are together, and women are working and studying together better results, for better conditions for all world. or all women. Also, I think that for pandemic period, local governments should open emergency call numbers. Emergency call, it's very important. I think. Also, I underlined that. The power of women's movement is very important to preventing violence against women, but it is not enough. That is why the governments, the international community, must I think must push all governments to sign CEDAW and Istanbul Convention, and to implementation and sufficient implementation is very beneficial and life saving for women.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aisha. Ms. Lights would like to add some input.
Yeah, thank you for that question. You know, I'm very, that's very personal for me, you know, especially now during the pandemic that we are seeing all these reports. No, so the ILO, especially for last year, no, when we saw the increasing cases of domestic violence, and these are the ones that are reported, no. So I think from a practical level, I know the PNP has started the women desks, but getting people to report, getting women to report is even the bigger challenge. Is if you can't get out of your house, if you're a child, if you are a young girl, you know, it's going to be difficult for you to report, and you'd be scared to report because where will you go if you do report? No, so there has been work that has been going on the passing of Convention 190 on the violence and harassment convention. So the Philippines is not yet a signatory for that, and in the recent months, you know, we have been pushing for that. So hopefully, you know, I mean, there's still a lot of work, even if that is passed, but that puts into priority for policies to be able to enforce that, especially now, no. But yeah, so I mean, small policies can work in terms of, you know, just encouraging and also increasing awareness. I know in the last few weeks, there has been a lot of work on the Safe Spaces Act, you know, just informing. So this is not just physical violence, but also online violence, right? And the Safe Spaces Act is actually pushing for that, you know, teaching women on how to report on these acts, and what is, you know, what is online violence. You know, I think awareness is important, not just for women, but also for men as well. We badly need more male allies, you know, to ensure that women are protected, amplify these voices, so that it's not only the responsibility of women to protect women, but also of men.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lights. Let's proceed to the next question addressed to Mayor Sweet. Some women's groups are lobbying for the passage of the quota system involving setting up a percentage or number for the representation of women in decision-making bodies. That's to ensure that women will have a chance in politics. What is your position on this? Are you in favor of a legislated quota system? Mayor? Ma'am, kindly unmute.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, Jules. I am in favor with that because we really need women to be in the position to help other women.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Now let's go back to Miss Aisha. The question, Miss Aisha, is this. Okay. How active is the women's groups in Turkey? You mentioned that Turkey is ranked 130th out of 153 countries in the 2020 Global Gender Gap Index report, which means it would take around 167 years to close the gender gap in the areas of education, employment, health, and political participation. So, what exactly are the women's groups in Turkey doing about this? What role do these groups have to improve or change the political, socio-cultural, and social and economic landscape of Turkey? Aisha, go
Yes.
ahead.
Thank you. Yes, women's group are so strong in Turkey. I would like to mention it. And we are moving together in most of times. I think I said that, but as you know, as women's group, we are working together some issues like violence against women. But we sometimes couldn't create common ground in some areas like that if ideological political sides affecting women's. As you know, most of parties have women's branches, and some of the women's groups are not NGOs. I think that we are calling gongos. Have you ever told gongos? And that is why we are working for women, and we are advocating women's rights, and we are supporting women's rights as a human rights. But some women's brands or some women's organizations, we are not at the same line. But in generally, we are working together, and in Turkey, women's groups, women's movements are strong. We have history from Ottoman Empire in Turkey. And that yes, what role do these groups have to improve or change the political? Yes, we are changing the political system, but it's not sufficient. It's insufficient in implementation aspects. I would like to give a mention that I would like to give an example about Istanbul Convention. As you know, it's very discussion issue in Turkey. Approximately 1 or 2 years, because it is called Istanbul Convention, but it's violence against women. It has a long name, but it's signed in Turkey, and it's signed firstly in Turkey and Istanbul. That is why it's called Istanbul Convention. It's very critical role in preventing domestic violence. And Turkey, yes, when 2011, Turkey announced that it's very important agreement in the world, and we are the first signature of this convention. But in 2020, the same government said that maybe it can be cancelled. It's not so important to preventing domestic violence. From the women's organizations, we are said that Istanbul Convention lives. It is our motto. Istanbul Convention lives, and we are so strong in social media, and we organized social media campaigns like Me Too in the world. We are saying Istanbul Convention lives, and now it is on how can I say, mood. It's not called, it's not talked so much, but sometimes the governments, the officials says that maybe it's not so important, and I ask a question that what is not important for Turkey, because according to government of Turkey, the agreement questions traditional gender roles and is very wrong. Yes, it's so important. That stance has burnt women across the country, and we walked on the streets, and we have pancarts, and we are walked the Istiklal Street and around the country, and we said it is so important, and we our government couldn't give this convention, and we are working together in this issue. in all side of NGOs are saying are working together.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Aisha. Okay, so now we have a question for Mayor Sweet. Before we let you go, Mayor, maybe you have a message to our viewers right now. Mayor Sweet. All right, we'll get back to Mayor Sweet, but nonetheless, Mayor Sweet, go ahead po. Before we let you go, ma'am, go ahead po. Message po.
Do I have a question? I'm so sorry. No
Actually,
question,
ma'am,
just a parting
we
message.
have a question. We have a question, and maybe you could add your parting message. The question is from Rafael Katuin. Society continues to face various movements that call for equality in terms of gender, race, creed, and social class. Through your personal insight, how do you think can these movements shape the women of the future, and in turn the landscape of women in the workforce?
How do you think in this movement? Okay. Right now, I'm so sorry. I'm catching my breath. I'm sorry if I have to leave early. Recently, just this morning, I had a opening of our dairy boxes and another enterprise that's going to be women led. So it's good for the women. So I need to go back. Anyways, the different movements that are working right now, different organizations to help women to be to have a seat in a position or to lead an organization or to be in a position or to be in a public servant. I think we need this because from the data that I showed earlier, how there is an underrepresentation of women. And I also said earlier that in our Philippine culture, people depend so much on or think so much. There's still this stereotyping that women can only do women's job like household chores. Other if you're in the position, they can only be assigned to women committees. So women can do so much more. Usually, women are not treated on the way they make their decisions, and women can multitask. We all know that. So with this movement, with this support from different organizations, I think this will push more women to go through the light, to show their capabilities, and by doing this, more women in the workforce. We can see more women working in public office, working as CEO, working as COO, and women by nature can do more. They care more. They have their emotion. They're emotional. So like I was said earlier. So I think support we can get from this organization or this movement will give women ways to show what they can do beyond the stereotyping that women can only do women portfolios or women committees. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you so much, Mayor Sweet Cerilias, for being here in our webinar this afternoon. Maraming salamat po. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we proceed to our next question, and this question is addressed to Ms. Lights. Ms. Lights, the question is from Madison. The question is, populating the field of STEM with women will create a positive transformation in the workforce. And with the increase of representation, this will finally answer the question, where are the women? However, how might this change the focal areas of study and methodology, also the relevance of the field to inform policy choices? Ms. Lights, kindly unmute, please.
No, I want to check like how will having more women change the focal areas of study, or is it the emphasis? Um, yeah,
I think
I just
yes.
need.
Yeah.
No, so when we say, so right now, I don't know if that's what you're looking at. If is it for the course choices, or in terms of, yeah, I mean, yes, we want more women in STEM, right? Not just because we want more women there, but it's also part of sustainable development that, that we have both men and women participating, in STEM work, especially now, no, especially now during the pandemic, where there are no precedents, right? In terms of policy, in terms of solutions, that can be that are needed, right? Um, but in terms of, I don't know if you're saying like in terms of studies, that it's STEM is integrated in everything, like in every area of study, whether you are in economics, political science, welding for that matter, no, it is there, and I think it becomes more important now because with the deluge of information on the web, right? Sometimes we tend to skip some of the key STEM skills, and sometimes, and sometimes we tend to, lose our grip on critical thinking, right, and creative thinking. And it's also a good way for us to also look back, right? So we know the PISA ratings. I don't know if some of you are familiar of our PISA ratings, right? We are failing miserably in science and math and even reading comprehension, maybe the problem is not just, knowing science and math, but if you can't read, you won't be able to understand the science, the STEM problem concerned, right? So it really is, I mean, while we concentrate on STEM, we also want to look at, what are the different factors that are, what are the barriers that are stopping both men and women, boys and girls from getting into these STEM occupations, right? What kind of culture are we trying to foster in our schools? What kind of policies do we need? So actually, I'm really passionate about STEM for workforce readiness. I'm not just looking at STEM to have more engineers, but how do we have the STEM skills to prepare this workforce, especially for the future of work? So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Madison.
Thank you so much, Miss Lights. Now we're at the end part of our session this afternoon, so I'd like to request Miss Aisha and Miss Lights to provide a concluding remarks before we let you go. Go ahead, Miss Aisha.
Yes. Um, could you repeat the last questions again? So sorry.
Just your final remarks before we end this session.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
My microphone is closed. Yes, thank you very much for giving this opportunity for me. I mentioned the women's organization and domestic violence and women's political participation, gender pay gap in Turkey. As I would like to underline that this is not only Turkey's problem. This is our global problem. And if you would reach the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, global goals, as you know, one of them is gender equality, the goals 5. And after these COVID-19 pandemics, the post-corona world, we need to sustain, we need to give women's side, women's aspects, women's experiences to all appointed and selected decision-making mechanisms. And if we should create sustainable words, we give women's side, women's skills in solving this global problem. That is why I mentioned, I said that we need more sustainable, more inclusive, more equal, and more diversible world. It could be possible. And it will be possible with women's. And said that women are strong together. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Aisha, and thank you for emphasizing the need to focus on SDG 5, the Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is gender equality, also adding that we need sustainable solutions to ensure that there is gender equality in society. Thank you so much, Miss Aisha. Now let's hear it from Miss Lights. Miss Lights, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jules. I'm glad that Isa mentioned about, SDG 5, no? So for us at the ILO, we do SDG 5 and SDG 8, which is decent work, no? So I think this is a good opportunity for us not only to look at, gender equality, but how does that look like in the workplace, Like if you are working in a job that does not treat you fairly, that's something of concern. Or if you are in an all male dominated workplace, maybe yes, you are satisfying your interest that you are all men, but you are also depriving yourself, of the diversity of perspectives that can be brought in the workplace, and especially now that workplaces, companies now are looking at innovation. You want to have diversity in the workplace, and so I think as women, we want to, like we want to start the journey, or if you're already in that journey, you want to make sure that at the end of your journey, your daughters, the generations that come after us have something, we stand on the shoulders of great women, no? And we want to continue that journey that they have already begun. And I think by us, being role models, and also our male allies, helping these role models, I think, we can get there, hopefully not as our studies show that it will take 200 years for women to pick up, right? And maybe, by some miracle, who knew the pandemic will happen, although it did make things worse for women, right? But I'm hopeful, no? And I'm hopeful for the women who are listening now, like in your own way, don't say that, I'm just this person, every person has the opportunity to make that change, so it's just a matter of you thinking that you have the tools, you already have the motivation to do it. So it's just a matter of you doing the small steps. So thank you again to IVLP for this opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Lights Viloria, and also for emphasizing SDG 8. That's decent work and economic growth. Definitely, women have a very vital role in achieving SDG 8 and all the SDGs by 2030. Thank you so much once again for joining us today, and may you continue to inspire and empower more women in your own fields. Once again, we have right now Ms. Aisha Kasikirik. We also have Miss Lights Viloria, and earlier we have Barbara Grabowska Moros and Mayor Sweet Ceriles. Thank you so much for being here. The Faces of Exchange, sharing their stories of impact. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
Happy Women's Month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jules. Happy Women's Month, everybody.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so now to formally close our program, here with is the Assistant Cultural Affairs Officer of the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines. Let's welcome Nina Lewis. Nina, go ahead.
Thanks, Jules. I'd like to start by thanking Miriam College International Studies Department, headed by one of our proud IVLP alumna, Melanie Reyes. All of our speakers today, it was such an engaging program. Thank you, Aisha Kasikirik, Barbara Grabowska-Moroz, Mayor Sweet, and Lights Valoria for your very insightful presentations. And then thank you, Jules and Ash, for moderating today's event. To close up, I'd like to read some excerpts from Hillary Clinton's Women's Rights are Human Rights speech, which is from 1995 when she was actually the First Lady, and she was at the UN's Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing. There's a lot of hope in her words, but perhaps not enough has changed since Hillary Clinton delivered this famous speech 25 years ago. So here goes. If women have a chance to work and earn as full and equal partners in society, their families will flourish. And when families flourish, communities and nations do as well. That's why every woman, every man, every child, every family, and every nation on this planet does have a stake in the discussion that takes place here. The great challenge of this gathering is to give voice to women everywhere whose experiences go noticed, whose words go unheard. We are the primary caretaker for most of the world's children and elderly, yet much of the work we do is not valued by economists, not by historians, not by popular culture, and not by government leaders. At this very moment, as we sit here, women around the world are giving birth, raising children, cooking meals, washing clothes, cleaning houses, planting crops, working on assembly lines, running companies, and running countries. Women are also dying from diseases that should have been prevented or treated. They're watching their children succumb to malnutrition caused by poverty and economic deprivation. They're being denied the right to go to school by their own fathers and brothers. They're being forced into prostitution, and they're being barred from bank lending offices and banned from the ballot box. Speaking to you today, I speak for them, just as each of us speaks for women around the world who are denied the chance to go to school or see a doctor or own property or have a say about the direction of their lives simply because they are women. The truth is that most women around the world work both inside and outside the home, usually by necessity. We need to understand that there is no one formula for how women should lead their lives. That is why we must respect the choices that each woman makes for herself and her family. Every woman deserves a chance to realize her own God-given potential. But we must recognize that women will never gain full dignity until their human rights are respected and protected. Tragically, women are most often the ones whose human rights are violated. Even now, rape of women continues to be abused as an instrument of armed conflict. Women and children make up a large majority of the world's refugees, and when women are excluded from the political process, they become even more vulnerable to abuse. I believe that now it's time to break the silence. It's time for us to say here for the world to hear that it is no longer acceptable to discuss women's rights as separate from human rights. These abuses have continued because for too long, the history of women has been a history of silence. Even today, there are those who are trying to silence our words, but the voices of this gathering must be heard loudly and clearly. If there is one message that echoes forth from this conference, let it be that human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights once and for all. Let us not forget that among those rights are the right to speak freely and the right to be heard. Let me be clear. Freedom means the right of people to assemble, organize, and debate openly. It means respecting the views of those who may disagree with the views of their governments. It means not taking citizens away from their loved ones and jailing them, mistreating them, or denying them their freedom or dignity because of the peaceful expression of their ideas and opinions. Now it is the time to act on behalf of women everywhere. If we take bold steps to better the lives of women, we will be taking bold steps to better the lives of children and families too. Families rely on mothers and wives for emotional support and care. Families rely on women for labor in the home. And increasingly, families rely on women for income needed to raise healthy children and care for other relatives. As long as discrimination and inequities remain so commonplace everywhere in the world, as long as girls and women are valued less, fed last, overworked, underpaid, and not schooled, subjected to violence in and outside their homes, the potential of the human family to create a peaceful, prosperous world will not be realized. Let this conference be our and the world's call to action. Let us heed that call so we can create a world in which every woman is treated with respect and dignity. Every boy and girl is loved and cared for equally, and every family has a hope of a strong and stable future. That is the work before you. That is the work before all of us, who have a vision of the world we want to see for our children and our grandchildren. The time is now. We must move beyond rhetoric. We must move beyond recognition of problems to working together to have the common efforts to build that common ground we hope to see. God's blessings on you, your work, and all who benefit from it. Godspeed, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Nina Lewis, for that closing remarks. Again, Miss Nina is the Assistant Cultural Affairs Officer of the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines. Happy Women's Month, Miss Lewis.
Happy Women's Month.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today for certificates. Make sure you fill out the attendance sheet. at the link provided in the Zoom, and we might show it here as well. There you go. So just key in that link on your browsers and then just fill out the attendance sheet so you can receive your certificates. Stay updated through the Facebook page as well. That's facebook.com/exchange alumni PH. Use the hashtags #IVLP, #YCD, #exchange alumni, and #USPH alumni. Also, catch the next programs in this webinar series of IVLP Faces of Exchange. Thank you for being with us today. This has been Jules Giang. Thank you so much. See you next month. And once again, happy Women's Month.